regular meeting with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Here.
Commissioner Barwick.
Here.
Commissioner Webb.
Here.
Commissioner Stecklin.
Here.
Mayor Absher.
Here. Ed, would you lead us in the pledge? Don't sit down, Ed.
First, thank you. For those who don't know me, my name is Ed Davis. I'm president of an organization here in Marion called Veterans on Parade. I want to congratulate the City Council and Mayor Absher on being re-elected. I think they made a wise choice. I only follow you on Marion Star and online sometimes to see how things are going. And I'm always proud to know that I've lived in Marion for almost 30 years, raised my family here. I'm also proud to know that, you know, the group we started a parade with almost 20-something years ago, 21 years, we planned 2 years in the making of this parade. We are now going into our 19th year this year. And it's because of the city, it's because of the people, the government, it's because of a lot of things that happen. Our volunteers that come out and do the job that we need to have done on that day. Now I keep saying, everybody, I must have had 8 or 10 people say to me, welcome home, Ed. You know, and I live in St. Louis. So, you know, it is kind of a welcome home because I've lived here the longest I've lived anywhere in my life. And I know you'll say, you don't sound like you're from here. But I'm not. I'm a Brooklyn, New York, born and raised guy. But I'm a Midwest guy now with a Brooklyn accent, and I enjoy the stuff inside of it. The parade's gonna be Saturday, September the 9th, at 10 a.m. it starts. Got a couple of things working. I hope they work out. You know, you never know. You plan these things, and I even was on the phone a couple of weeks with a group of fighter pilots, ex-fighter pilots, out of Muskegon, Michigan. I found out about them. They're called the Hooligans Flight Team. Well, when I told the guy I was married, my wife's from Michigan, I was married in Michigan, my kids were born in Michigan, how about you guys coming down and give us a flyover? It would have probably happened, except they charge for certain distances. You know, more localized stuff they don't. But the fuel to fly from Muskegon and Kalamazoo down here was roughly about $550 per aircraft, and they have a 4-man team. I said, well, I can take 2 of you. And he said, no, we usually go as a group of 4. But he said, on the day that you want us at, September 9th, there's a big air show with these TBF fighter training planes in Akron, Ohio. So again, I keep getting bounced. But he says, let me talk to somebody. So I'm waiting for him to call me back and surprise me that we'll finally get that kind of a flyover. Last weekend before, last weekend in St. Louis at Scott Air Force Base, they had the Blue Angels. They had a big air show. I was sitting out there saying, you know, can you bring them back September 9th, looking up at the sky. But, you know, it's so difficult to get, unless you're a pro football team or you're a college team or something, you don't get the flyovers. It's just, even veterans don't warrant that, and it's sad that that's the way it is, especially when we're the taxpayers. We are looking to have a great parade. I hope everybody come out. Last year, and I'm gonna make this announcement while I'm on the air here, that our memorial ceremony, we had 2 Gold Star mothers in our parade. Both of them lost sons, one in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. And these ladies, you know, I'm humbled by these 2 ladies. They come out and you can see it in their eyes when we're talking and honoring them, you know, how burnt up inside they are. You can just see how they feel. We had only about 53, I counted, in the stands. And I'd like to, get at least 150 people, which we had the year before. Now, I don't know, it was because people just want to march in the parade or ride in the parade and then go home, and I understand that. But the ceremony lasts a half an hour. And I really and truly would like to have people come out and show these two mothers, sometimes we have three, that their sons just didn't die in vain, and we respect and honor them. And you can do that by being in attendance out at the fairgrounds for that stinking half hour that doesn't take any time at all. It takes longer to make peanut butter and jelly for a family of 6. And they can go there and just be a part of this. So I'm hoping I'm gonna start writing articles. I've talked to the mayor about it. I talked to Terrence about it, and we're also looking at another group, which I won't go into because I know we don't have a definite, right, Terrence?
But it's close.
Is it? That'll be a nice surprise. It'll be a great surprise for the parade and the people of Marion, Southern Illinois. Other than that, I thank you, Mayor, for having me so I could get on the road and go home tonight. And I appreciate everything everybody does to make this happen. Thank you, everybody.
You can come back.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, bring us to item number 4 on the agenda, which is public comments, audience to visitors. I know we've got some people in the audience who want to speak tonight. This portion of the meeting is regulated by 2 different ordinances, 3128 and 3134. Those ordinances, I believe, are still up here by the flower arrangement on the corner. If you want to get a copy of those. But is there an order that you want to speak in? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Dennis Moore. I want to talk to you regarding the Marion Library for just a minute. I went to the last meeting and brought some things to light to them. Now I want to bring them to you, and I'll explain why in a minute. While I was there, I mentioned a couple of books that were in the youth section. Thankfully, they appear to be gone at this point, but they were available. Still available electronically or through sharing, through the library system. But they were very explicit with regard to sexual graphics and language, and this would be not euphemistic language, but very bold language like you would hear in some very adult-themed movies or magazines. Thankfully, those appear to be gone. What we requested from the library was not that these things be banned, but that the library bring parental authority and oversight back in on such books. Segregate them to where the parent has to come in each time for that type of book, so that the parent has a say. Because there may be some that's okay, but others they wouldn't, okay? So they need to have that opportunity. As I said, those books appear to be gone, and those were checked online, they weren't checked on the shelf. The 3 I'm going to mention tonight were checked on the shelf. One of them, and I'm not going to name titles, but one of them speaks of watching an adult film and watching a sexual act that a man performed on a woman. But these 2 teenagers, then the girl performs a similar act or the reciprocal act on the boy that is there. These are teenagers. And this is in the youth section of the library. Another one has a passage about a young man who, being 6 years old, was performing such acts on the boys in the neighborhood, and how much he loved doing that. The third one's so good that the man, before chapters or acts within the book, he put warning contents so that you could skip them. Here's some of the things in it: rape, incest, sexual abuse, all dealing with minors and adults. That particular book also contains some racial epithets of a very negative nature, a very derogatory nature. Again, I'm not here to ask anybody to ban books. I'm here to ask the city council, and I thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm here to ask you to take oversight on this. You appoint the board. You approve the hiring. And I'm just asking you to embrace the responsibility to protect the children in this town and in the surrounding area by placing that authority for this type of material back into the hands of the parents where it belongs. At the library meeting, the only comment that was made was, we'll lose state funding. I don't know how much that is, but I have been told it's not much, percentage-wise, I don't know. But I looked at the bylaws. I run 501c3. I looked at the bylaws. I looked at the new library, or the amendments to the library bill that's coming down from the House in Springfield, and that's been approved. And quite honestly, with a little due diligence, they could rewrite the bylaws and they could add a policy and probably not have any issue with state funding. But if they did, maybe it's time to tighten the belt a little bit in favor of the children. That's really all I've got to say to you. I thank you for your time, and I pray that you will embrace this responsibility to keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Dennis, I got a
Yes.
couple questions. The three books that you mentioned, they are in, and you said they were in the youth section of the library.
They are in there. We checked it today.
Youth section meaning below a certain age?
12 to 19.
12 to 19. And I'm assuming that the legal age is 18 or is it 21?
I can't tell you the legal age on this.
Okay.
What I can tell you is as a grandfather, all my kids are grown. But as a grandfather, I would not want my grandchildren reading these books. That type of language, particularly given in such a way that it's so common in our culture today, has caused a lot of heartache. It gets into the bottom studies have shown of sexual predators, of sexual trafficking, all of the things that are not right in our society, or at least in part of the things that are not right in our society. So it's not an age factor, it's a content factor. And again, all I'm asking is that you put it back in the parents. Let the parent be the judge of whether they want their child to read that type of material or not. Because right now, there is no oversight unless the parent is there. And as a matter of fact, until the last meeting, they would tell parents to leave. You weren't allowed it in the 12 to 19 age or in the children's section because it was for that age group. That was brought out as well, and thankfully the board said, no, retrain your people. That was one thing they addressed that night. And when we were up there today, we had no issue. I still have a little issue about the age on the youth floor, youth being 12 to 19. 18 and 19-year-olds are not youth, they're adults. Yet they're included in all the activities up there. I'm not sure that should be either. Anything else?
Those are the only two questions I have.
I agree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in favor of banning any books, because if we ban this type of books, then we want to ban Christian type books. I'm a Christian, and allowing 12, 13, 14-year-old children to see stuff like this or to access this type of stuff without a parental consent is not right.
And
I
many
stand with you on that, again,
Thank you.
I'm not in favor of banning books, but there needs to be some restraint on who can check that. If parents want to check those books out and give them to the 12, 13, 14-year-old, they can do that. In my opinion, it's not very wise, but that's their
And
prerogative.
that's what we asked the board for.
I'm right there with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Who's next?
Hey, and good evening. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read what I wrote instead of speaking off the cuff. My comments again are in relation to the library, starting, the incident that kind of has brought this to the forefront. But let me say first that my purpose proposals here are not to find any fault or assign blame for that, rather just to address policies that actively seem to discourage parental empowerment for those that wish to exercise it, and ensure that the course of future policies do not erode community values. I'm going to try and keep it brief, so I may skip over a little bit this since I handed it out. Let me say that in regards to the board meeting, there were a few things that were a little troubling. One of the board members brought up the piece of legislation that I believe has now been signed by Governor Pritzker as HB 2789. They stated that without any, it was stated without any correction from any of the other members that the bill prevented them from removing any books from the library, and they could not single out material to avoid. And this was followed up by the comment that if they were to do so, they would lose their funding from the state, and a guest at the meeting asked how much of the budget was supplied by state funding. The response, again without correction, was a majority of the funds. I do find it a little hard to believe that a board member was that ill-informed of where their funds come from. I did include that that bill amends two sections very slightly, and then there's this little 8-line section that I included here. It says that it actually doesn't prohibit removing materials or sectioning them off unless it's for a doctrinal or partisan reason. A proscription or removal based on community standards is a legitimate argument and something that could be included. Now, the bill does also say that the library shall adopt the ALA Library Bill of Rights, or develop a statement prohibiting the practice of banning books. I would argue for the latter, simply because the ALA Library Bill of Rights does say that no material should be restricted based on age, and that is in there, and there's additional writings on there available on their website, basically arguing further for no restriction based on age regardless of the material. And it says that these two conditions are necessary to keep the library eligible for grants from the state of Illinois. One thing I would note as well is that the bill doesn't go into effect until January 1. You can clean up and get a lot of things done by then. So back to the point of the finances, how much of the library's operating budget comes from state grants. It's a few percent. I pulled the budget documents from the city treasurer on the city council website, and in the current fiscal year, the state grants amount to less than $25,000. It's like $24,700 and some change. It's approximately 2.6% of the total budget. The city itself will supply 90.8% of the budget from the general fund. And over the last 3 years, there's been a little fluctuation in state grants, but it's never been more than 4%. So let me say, to be clear, I'm not advocating the authorization of thought police. I'm not seeking to remove all the LGBT content or anything that myself or others find objectionable on theological grounds. I'm not trying to ban books or limit the rights of adults. Those practices are contrary to American principles and the law awaiting the governor signed. I'm advocating for the return of long-held societal norm whereby we agree that pornography does not belong in the hands of children. I seek to reestablish this as a boundary which we as a community will not cross. The current state of things is that pornographic material exists in the library in animated form primarily, but it's still there, and it's pretty explicit. There's way more than 3 books up there. The children have access to it. Since this writing, I believe they have amended that policy, at least adults are not actively prohibited from entering that area. We had mentioned about the 18 to 19-year-olds being in with the young adults and included in the activities already. I will say that at that same library board meeting, we have to be careful that we can't allow others to override the wishes of parents. One of the current librarians actually posed the following question, and I quote, "If a child wants material their parent doesn't want them to have, what am I supposed to do?" The answer to that should be obvious. The parents should retain the right to set boundaries for their children, period, end of discussion. One last point of fact, the school libraries in Marion Communities Unit School District Number 2 from elementary through high school have a mechanism to allow parents to denote certain types of material that they find objectionable for their children. The children are not able to check out these genres or material based on the wishes of the parents. The material remains accessible to other students whose parents do not express objections. Per conversation with one of the current librarians, they are looking to craft a policy that is in compliance with the law to retain state funding while also preserving the rights of parents and the protection of children. This was to be an item at the most recent school board meeting. I happen to know somebody on that, and it's been delayed so that they can get with an attorney and figure this out. So like I tell the 60 some odd docs that work under me, if you come to me with the problem, you have to come to me with a solution. And so I would kind of propose the following. I think the board and the director should develop a process for classifying the material as pornographic, and then it could be moved to an adults only section, and restrict the children from entering that area. The library would then need to pen its own statement rather than adopting the ALA Bill of Rights, capturing its elements and the requirements of the pending of the legislation, and denoting that material of a pornographic nature will not be accessible to minors. The city attorney could be made available to the library board and directors to assist with this. The library could then spend the next several months reviewing its collection for the material and dispositioning it in the manner they choose. And then finally, a system for parental empowerment similar to what our school system will keep in place should be available at the library as well. Thank you all. Now I can see you.
Have you ever objected to or asked for review of any of these specific materials in written form per the library policy?
I personally have not. I know others that have.
Who?
I should ask them. I can submit you names, but I will do it outside of this. I'd like to confer with them first.
Thanks. Who else?
Hello, my name is Sandra Levitt, and I'm here as an observer. I moved back to this area several years ago when my husband retired from the ministry. So we lived in Heron for 11 years and raised our kids there. And we've come back to Southern Illinois because it is the best part of Illinois ever, because we've lived in Central and Northern, and Southern is where we've decided to stay. So as an observer, since I've been back, all my children are grown, and 2 of them are very successful people outside the state of Illinois, and we're so blessed to have our youngest one in Murfreesboro, and she and her husband are here probably the rest of their lives. So that's why we chose Illinois to live in, because we have our grandkids here. So we have grandkids, and I'm very concerned right now about their future in Illinois. Since I've been back and enjoying the Williamson County Republican women and the Southern Illinois conservative women, I have heard stories about what's happening. I don't live in Marion, I live in Carterville, by the way, but I've heard stories of what's happening in your schools. Like there's furries, like I don't know furries, but apparently, tell me if I'm wrong, that there's litter boxes in the bathrooms for the furries to use. I mean, this is crazy. But and then to find out pornography in the library. It's like, wow, and then to hear the story about, well, we'll lose funding if we don't have these books that they send us. Is that how it works in all the cities? I mean, if we don't follow the current ideologies, we're going to lose our funding? Is that like extortion? I mean, really? if you don't agree with the ideologies that have control right now, then you lose funding. You don't get the money. I mean, is that how it works?
Sometimes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So I'm a human being. I'm an American. I'm a human being. I'm a Christian. I am the wife of a veteran, a Bronze Star recipient, and the veterans, they have fought for our freedoms, so now we don't have the Second Amendment's being taken away, the First Amendment's being taken away here in Illinois. If you don't follow the ideologies of the woke people, yeah, it's okay to have furries and let the kids be furries and use litter boxes. Like, I'm a human being, I use the bathroom. But it's just, as an observer, I just feel that what is an American? Are we Americans anymore? Are we? And are we human beings, or are we binaries? Binaries are ones and zeros. But now you have to classify yourself as binaries and non-binaries. And are you a 1 or a 0? Do you know? I don't. But I just feel, I went to the library board meeting and I was astonished. I was flabbergasted. I started crying when the mother showed us the comic books that her 10-year-old received. I'm like, that was in a library? I'm sorry, that was in a library? Like, wow. And I've been to my 8-year-old's library. I helped with their book sales, and I saw some books in there that are kind of questionable. This is in Murfreesboro. But, the sign of the times is about same-sex parents and stuff like that. It's like, wow, that's weird. Whatever happened to Tom, Dick, and Jane and Spot? But anyway, so I'm just an observer. And I find Marion, I used to perform there at the Civic Center. And things are changing since my kids were little. And so I just would like Marion to be a human city where people have traditions and they certainly respect their veterans, because I've been to Honor Flight and they are amazing. But I just am praying that leadership in this area doesn't cave in. Like, let's keep our traditions, let's have some morals. I don't even know, how many abortion clinics are there in Marion now? I know there's 2 and 1 going up in Carbondale, but just as an observer, are there abortion clinics here in Marion too? I mean, let's be human. That's all I'm asking. Let's just be human and have common sense. So, thank you for letting me speak.
Anyone else?
No.
My name is Janice Feintel, and I'm a resident of Marion, Illinois. And you were asking the question, sir, Mr. Patton, I think, concerning what is the age of, what is legal, to purchase pornography. And so I looked it up. Overview of Illinois child pornography laws. Child pornography laws protect children from sex offenses. In general, Illinois child pornography laws prohibit the making or distribution of images depicting or involving a child under the age of 18. Child pornography includes videos, films, or photos of age minors participating in sexual acts or showing body parts specified by law. The state also punishes individuals who permit their children to participate in child pornography or who coerce children to participate in child pornography. In addition, state laws prohibit the possession of child pornography if individuals voluntarily and knowingly possesses pornography depicting children. Illinois state laws increase the criminal charge of child pornography to aggravated child pornography when the child involved is under the age of 13. So I think that clearly states, what our laws are in Illinois. The thing that I'm really disgusted about is that Mr. Fox, who is overseeing this information to be put in these bags at the library, the only information that was on the mature bags was mature. And he so stated that it was for 21 years of age or older. Well, since then, he has actually accused the mother of, on social media of actually, asking the librarian for that mature information from that mature bag. And the mother did not do so at all. She clearly stated that her child was 10 years old. The librarian asked that, and then they were conferring to each other whether they should give this child the mature bag. He was 10 years old. And then the library people didn't even know their information either, because they gave it to children 13 years or older. So I think what's happening in our United States of America, we're going way off the cliff. And we have leaders, not only in our federal government, but also in our state government, such as Governor Pritzker and the Democratic left, that are initiating and putting through laws that are pushing for sex education that's absurd. And the schools in this area had to opt out of it, this past year, and there were schools that did not do that. So the schools that did not do that were the Marion Unit 2 and also Carterville. The schools that did opt out of this deplorable sex education was Goreville, Johnson City, Heron, and I think those are the three. Johnson City, Heron, Goreville. That's what I recall. But the thing is, the parents had the right to opt out of that sex education on their own. Thomas DeVore had that on his website. But the thing is, this sex education that's going into teaching our kindergartens from 12th grade, in my opinion, is doing nothing more than grooming children towards transgenderism, homosexuality, sexual immorality, and that is not what God discusses in his Bible. In Genesis, he says that we are created in the image and likeness of God. He created male and he created female. There's no deviation in that. And if anybody wants to check that out, it's Genesis 1:26. Chapter 1, verse 26, and the next 2 or 3 verses. But the thing is, we have leaders in our country that are pushing this transgenderism and how many, options that we can have, and the children are losing their identity. And we have seen that so many times. They're grooming these children, and they want to groom them from K through 12, and because they've already been doing it in our college level. And now they want to bring it in here. So what does that mean? That means that the children will not know their identity. Their identity is in Christ, the God above. He made their identity. And we have these demonized people that are leading our state and our country, federal government, that are pushing these options. And it's time, and also taking the rights away from parents. I mean, it can't get any worse than having these abortion clinics in Carbondale saying that your children can go and get hormones to change your gender. The children can make this decision. And the state of our Illinois state said as of last June that the parents have no rights anymore, that the children can do this on their own. Please explain to me the craziness of this all. It is just crazy. And it's getting worse. And please tell me, what is the difference in these comic books who show this deplorable pornography? I mean, it was stuff that was group sex, anal sex. It was homosexuals in bed in the second group of pictures. And then the third set of pictures, let me think. I cannot recall.
Naked women.
Was it? Oh, yes. They were women that were strippers and prostitutes. And they were scantily it was something that you would see in worse than a Playboy magazine. And how in the world Mr. Fox of our community would put this stuff across and put it in a library. I mean, give me a break. And then the librarians, the people that are in charge of that, the board of directors and whoever was there, didn't even look through the information before they handed this out to children. I mean, I've been fighting for the last 3 years. I have gotten more involved in government since the November 3rd, 2020 elections. And the situation with this illegitimate Jacko Biden as our president. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And if you don't know the truth, you better get on independent news and find out the truth. But the thing is, we are heading off a cliff. And it's time for the Christians to stand up and the parents to stand up for their children's rights. Because if they don't, we are going in a very bad direction. And the next thing that our state of Illinois passed was the CRTLS, the Critical Response Leading and Training, Critical Response Leading and Teaching. So the thing is, we have our teachers unions that are pushing that, who are also probably Democrat. And so they're teaching. This agenda is supposed to start in 2025, coming into our public schools. And basically, it's pushing that there's no truth. There is truth. The truth is in the Bible. God explains that. And our forefathers brought that in front when they created our country. Our forefathers, George Washington and Monroe, we are a country that is under God. And they came over here on the Mayflower and they put all of our Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, everything, it has been, a lot of those men were ministers and they used the Bible principles to put in their laws. So the thing is, I'm asking you to do something about this. If this is what this law says, then please tell me why our Secretary of State and our governor and our Democrats voted this terrible law in saying we can put anything that we want to into the libraries. When it is sexually immoral, it's pornographic, it's stuff that you would buy at the Lion's Den or wherever, but it shouldn't be in the library. And to me, what they're trying to do now is indoctrinate the children in the libraries for the summer. Not only in our public schools, but also in the libraries now. And you know what? Parents aren't even aware of what's going on until it happens. But the thing is, we have to take a stand and do something about this. And not just here, but we have to get involved in government. You know, I mean, I was an election judge this past consolidated election, and I have been doing this since 2016. And it is a sad state when 60% of our voters didn't even vote. We have policemen in our community that didn't even vote. It is disturbing that we are not taking a stand and using our rights as voters to change the people that are running our state and local governments. We are very much red down here in Southern Illinois, but the thing is, we have leaders that are in our House of Representatives and in our Senate, and definitely Mr. Pritzker, he has a transgender brother who is,
Okay,
you know,
we're gonna stop right there.
but the thing is,
Curtail your comments at this point, okay? I've gotta move on with the meeting. You
Okay.
Extended your time.
all right. But the thing is, we have to change things. We have to stand up. We cannot do this any longer, and we've got to stand up as a community in our local government. We have to do this for the children's sake. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Has everybody spoken at once too?
No.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Stop me. I'd like to say a couple of words if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. I'm not gonna be rude. I am one of those woke people because I'm not asleep. Let me just say that first of all. I wasn't born in the state, but I grew up in Marion during the segregation era. I remember when women couldn't vote. I have 4 brothers that are Vietnam vets. My father is a longshoreman, and several uncles and aunts and numerous relatives who have been in the service, only to come back here and couldn't use their rights. Having said that, I think this is purely, their agenda is to just ban stuff, because I happen to come from slavery. That's pornographic within itself. And if you don't want that history, then I guess I just had an incident at school where my little niece was threatened by Christian-like children, called the N-word, and threatened to hang her by a tree because she's a straight A student and didn't want to play with them. So these were not African Americans that were bullying her. I think the Bible says, judge not lest ye be judged. And by the way, I got 6 preachers in my family, so I'm real familiar. I'm an African Methodist Episcopalian, so I am a Christian. Grew up in the Christian way. I just really don't like the fact that it seems like you're against, you got rights and everybody's got rights. If you want your rights, please don't block anybody else's rights, because I'm living it every single day, and that's all I have to say. Except for I'm really offended.
Okay.
May I ask who offended her tonight? Who?
No, we're not gonna end up in a,
Okay, I
we're not
hope
gonna
I
do
didn't
that.
offend anybody.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna address some things, probably offend everybody in the room. How about that? Fair enough?
That's your right.
Okay. So, and I don't speak for this city or the city council, I speak for me on this. Because I've been immersed in this since Sunday before, 2 Sundays ago, when I think you sent me notice of this comic book. So number one, we're gonna segregate the comic book issue from all this other stuff that's been talked about. The story's changed a whole lot, as I indicated would, or I actually didn't indicate that, that's what I suspected would when I sat here at this council the last time and said, I think, quote, how I was, what was my 3 words? I said, I'm embarrassed, mortified, and I'm angry, but I'm not gonna make decisions when I'm embarrassed, mortified, and angry. And I'm glad I didn't. Because lots of other information have come out since then. So to put the record straight on the comic book issue, to my knowledge, there was one, and I've got a copy of it. It's in my office. And it made my ears turn red and my face turn red to hold it, much less read it. But to my knowledge, there was one that was distributed in one of those bags. The mother in question intercepted it. It never ended up in the hands of a child. Thank God. Okay? I don't believe there was any effort well, hang on, before I say that. As I've rehashed this over and over and tried to learn about what happened, one of the things that could have perhaps, in hindsight, which is always 20/20, it seems, mitigated this, because somebody said, one of you said, that we didn't even bother to look at the material. That's not true. We were given a lot of those bags with the youth-oriented material, the mature-oriented material. I agree that the definition of that wasn't very well set. That story's also changed a little bit over time. The books were assembled in the same order, it appears. Assembly line style, which is what was described to me when we had some bags that were left over. I've got 2 of them in my office. And as we dissected those, so to speak, that appears to be consistent because they were all in the same order. Substantially the exact same titles with a couple of changes, but the same comic book essentially. And like I said, one of these packages ended up with that vile comic book in it. What we did was open up one of those packages and look through them for each of the youth. Obviously, in that package, that particular book wasn't in there. We were either told or assumed, the latter of which is dangerous, but reasonable, that they were all the same. When I say reasonable, again, in hindsight, it's easy to say, well, we should have looked through every book, every page for 100+ of these bags. I'm not sure under the same circumstance if I would have done that, if I had been the person in charge, if I would have actually done that. If the presumption is that what I've just looked at is representative of the rest. Clearly, Mr. Fox has apologized for this. He went and fell on the sword, so to speak, at the library board meeting, I understand. I've got a audio clip of him saying so, which he said it was his responsibility. I think Dan's a good person. I don't think he intended for this to happen, but it did happen. And we've got to put some safeguards if we are ever to do anything of the sort again, because the ultimate, before we get into this other set of issues and give my opinion on that, clearly when we're taking in material from a third party into the library, we've got to take even extra care. And so, but that's that. What's interesting about it is the actual aggrieved party that received this book came in to talk to me to make sure that I understood that all this other stuff that was being said, that no one spoke for them. That they were some of the most gracious people I've ever met, especially under the circumstances, and a heck of a lot more gracious than I would have been under the same circumstances. So I take a lot of stock in what they had to tell me, which was a sense of, I hope this never happens again. Our sole purpose of going to that library meeting was to make sure that other parents were alerted in case it got into other books. But they're forgiving of the situation. Now, at great risk to starting and furthering more political fighting or hubbub, I want to address some of these other issues because I've studied this too, and I've got very mixed feelings on all of it. I personally believe we also ought to take more safeguards relative to the material that might be sexual in nature specifically, for young children. But therein lies the problem, is who defines that? I think you have a very clear definition of what that is and maybe some specific titles, although you did not want to mention what those titles here, Mr. Moore. The policy at the library, which I've got a copy of it relative to, if any of you want to have it. Matter of fact, I printed several copies so that you guys had them, is to be inclusive of material for people that, I can't say it the way that it says it, so I'm not going to try. These underlines are mine, by the way, not the library's. An effort is made to include information representing all sides of controversial issues. The criteria for the selection of controversial materials are the same as for any other materials. They have no distinguishing labels. This is one of the things that I personally feel like should be reconsidered. But there's a lot of people who feel very different about that issue. And I understand why they feel different about that. Responsibility for the reading choices of children rests with their parents or legal guardians. And I know there's some disagreement about what, I've heard it. It sounds like they maybe have changed that policy as to who's allowed on the floor. But at the end of the day, there's two compelling things I want to say, which not everybody in this room is going to agree with, and it's going to sound like we're trying to sidestep I'm trying to sidestep the issue, and I'm very much not. But I'm a believer in the processes, and I'm a believer in the people that we've empowered to be literally the trustees of the library. This city council's role in the library is limited. As has been mentioned, we do have employees of the city for the convenience of the city. And we fund it, as has been mentioned. But the policies and the procedures are determined by the library board of trustees, and always have been. That's statutory, by the way. It's not that we invented that, it's because that's the way a library district is supposed to operate. Here's the interesting thing that I want to make a point of, and as an encouragement, if nothing else. I'm not trying to beg people to object to materials, but everybody, including the five of us, can object to materials. There's a very well defined and laid out policy in this same document. I'll give you a copy before you leave if you like, on the steps necessary to complain or to ask for review of any specific title. So I asked you, who's complaining? Because this process isn't being followed. To my knowledge, in the 2.5 years under the current library director, there's been no formal request for review. And this formal request for review, as it should be, can go all the way to appeal to the library board of trustees directly. It's not being done. As a matter of fact, in that 2.5 years, to give you a scale of this, there's been approximately 125,000 books checked out of that library. Transactions. To my knowledge, there's been 0 objections that have been brought to the board of trustees. But regardless, there are several reasons why that may be. Maybe they don't understand what the policy is. Maybe they don't want to follow the policy. They don't want to get that well involved. But it is the policy nonetheless. What I don't believe, and some things that have been insinuated, not necessarily here tonight, but I'm told online and elsewhere, relative to our employees at the library trying to groom or trying to push material off. Again, I'm not talking about the comic book, we're talking about the other issues. I do not believe that's the case. I just simply don't. It would have to be proven to me otherwise. And I think in the understandable firestorm of this comic book issue, lots of leaps have been made and frankly indicted lots of people in their character, which is disgusting to me because it's simply not the case. Now, if there are specific titles of which I have no doubt that there's somebody that's gonna object. And here's my frame of reference. My wife, and this has been a while ago, my youngest son just graduated Marion High School Thursday night, so it's been a while since they've been on the youth floor. But every Saturday, my wife took all three of them down there. When they were of the right age, they were 5 years apart. So we're talking between 2003 and 2008, let's say. There were materials then that she objected to. Not formally, but in our case, we understood that it was our responsibility to be on the lookout for that stuff, and we had a decision to make. That decision was not to check out that material. So I've got very mixed feelings on all this. While I agree with a lot of what is said, I still have yet to hear of a specific title that's in question. And to my knowledge, this process of objecting to these titles hasn't been done, and that's what I want to encourage you to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
3 specific titles. Looking for Alaska, Beyond Magenta, All Boys Aren't Blue.
Okay.
They are on the shelf up there now. They all contain the material that's a matter of record. And nobody is asking, again, that these books, we're asking that they be put in a place where parents are now aware that these may contain questionable material. You need to look at them. That's all we're asking.
I understand that.
We're asking that so that some child or youth can't accidentally pick that book up and say, oh, this sounds interesting, and flip it open and find something that mom looking over her shoulder is suddenly aghast at what's being read or what's being seen. That's what we're asking.
I understand. And to me, personally, again, I'm not speaking for the city, I'm speaking from here, but for me, that sounds like a completely reasonable request. But at the end of the day, I simply believe it's the library board that needs to be making revisions to, or not, to their policies and procedures, including this one.
Mr. Mayor, that's why I brought up, when I mentioned that at least one of the board members over there stated that a majority of their money was coming from the state and they were worried about that. That was my point. The purpose was to, I think maybe if the board had some reassurance that they didn't need to be worried about $25,000 or $30,000, then that would give them the latitude to make some of those changes.
Well, I've heard that number too. I wouldn't bet my life that that's actually the correct number, but I think
It's on the
it's
city treasurer's report.
Okay, but it varies. There's more than just the funding that's probably at stake, in all fairness, and it has to do with access to all the other shared libraries. And yes, that's where the extortion comes to some extent.
I have a question. Are city representatives allowed to go to Springfield and voice their concerns with the governor, or like, it seems like nowadays everything's based on state funding, and if you don't follow there's always that threat. If you don't follow what I say, what we want, then you don't get the funding. I mean, is there do y'all send any lawyers or representatives from the city that can go and voice your concern? If you have that concern, well, if it doesn't bother you, well, there you go. But if your citizens are bothered by that fact, then do you have the opportunity to voice that anymore?
We do through our local representatives. That's who we would speak with.
I mean, how many times do you get to do that?
Talk to one of them once a week, probably.
Well, that's good. I didn't know. It's like,
Yeah. We've actually got 2 in Marion now that split the district, so we've got to navigate that.
well, that's
But,
my concern. Like,
yeah.
why do you have to? Why is there always that threat nowadays that you don't get this money if you don't do what we want you to do? Or
Well, that's only part of it, and in all fairness, that's only part of the equation. And if they said the majority of their funding came from that, I think that's incorrect and they're ill-informed. But the the other issue is, which you guys really don't wanna hear, is not everybody feels like you. And it's a public library, and some people do want access to some of this material. And that's the balance that has to be struck ultimately.
You know, we're not asking.
I understand, I get it, and you've been polite, and I think, like I said, from my standpoint, what you're asking is reasonable. It does not conform to the American Library Association and how they feel about it, but they are just another group of people. To me, I don't necessarily put, obviously they're professionals and I give them credibility for that, but it is just a group of individuals that feel however they feel and vote on something, so, but, yeah.
Do you know, have they changed the policy if you have a 10-year-old and they're going into the 10-year-old section, that before the parent could not be in that room with them? Has that changed?
Well, I think they actually indicated that they had.
That appears to have changed since the last board meeting. And I even, if I forgot to say it up there, I meant to thank them for changing.
You do say it, I think.
Because we were up there today and we had no issues with that.
Well, I agree that the parent needs oversight and the parent needs to parent their children. But the way it was before, if you weren't allowed to go into the room, how can you parent the children and they've got free access to whatever?
Well,
You know, that,
even now, John, how many parents drop their 14 or 15-year-old off to check out a book and walk back out?
Well, I got a little bit of an issue with that too, because it's not our responsibility to parent the kid either,
Right.
so that's on the parent as well. I mean, it's kind of like, well, let's use a too close to home example, I mean, based on what the other issue was. Apparently, I don't want to turn mine loose in the comic book store. But if that's what you're using for your babysitting mechanism, that's probably ill-advised at this point. And so, we're not gonna solve this issue tonight, we're all hearing it out and we're gonna have to move on, but, we'll certainly share, and I've made some suggestions to the library board, Board of Trustees chairperson about my thoughts, but those are just my thoughts. My thoughts as mayor don't carry any more weight, frankly, than yours do, in my opinion, in this situation. I thought those were received well, and I think there's these things and some of the things that you all have suggested they should review and see if, let them speak to it. And I would encourage you to feel free to go to those library board meetings in the meantime, to continue to do that.
As an observer, as far as character is concerned, I did not know Mr. Fox before this library council meeting, and he did give a very sincere apology that it happened. But then again, he did make a statement that was kind of like, it was a very wrong decision, but he said he thought it would be funny to have something for the adults to get, you know, like to have. So that's why he brought those comments.
Well, I don't think it's very funny,
I
and,
do not either.
and
So
it's-
that,
but let me just leave it this way with Mr. Fox. We're bringing up character and these kinds of things. That man's been through hell
sure he did.
since this has happened, whether you think that's justified or not. Death threats and threats to burn down his establishment, which, by the way, would burn this building down too, so I don't appreciate that. Furthermore, and the fire department does not need to practice. That's where this stuff gets way out of hand real fast, threatening people's lives and businesses and things like that. So he's been through hell. He's probably still going through hell. And maybe some of you think that's deserved, but nonetheless, I'm not exactly sure how all this gets in front of the library board, other than to introduce these conversations with them and ask them to consider it, but that's where it stands.
Well, thank you for, if you would do that, we would thank you for
Okay.
that.
I would like to say something,
Yeah,
Mayor,
absolutely.
if I may. I think through this happening, we're gonna take a hard look at the policies and procedures. Probably discuss that with the library board and see what their thoughts are. I think things need to be tweaked a little bit as far as policy. Fox for a long time, and I will say right now, it was an accident. There were no ill intentions whatsoever. It was an accident that happened, and it's unfortunate. And I want to finish by saying this, and I hope I don't make any of you mad, but here's my thoughts on this.
I made him mad, you can make him mad too.
When it happened,
Not mad, just the record.
when it happened, I saw it on Facebook before I even heard about it. And that is not the place to air your dirty laundry. If there was an issue, that issue needed to be brought here to the city council meeting or to the mayor's office or to Cody or whoever privately so we could have taken care of it rather than posting the picture of the comic book on Facebook. That's my opinion. I was more irritated about that than this whole process because that opened the door for everybody to see it. Kids, adults, whatever. You know how popular Facebook is. You know how popular TikTok is. This is evil. And that's what we need to censor. I do not like the fact that it was posted out there for everybody to see. That to me remains, it should remain a private adult issue that needs to be worked out with adults. That's what I wanted to say because that's the biggest. I wish we could go back and change all that, but we can't. It's already out there. That door's already been opened. Cows are already out to the pasture. But I would encourage anyone, not only with this issue, but any issue, come to the city council, to Cody, to the office, to City Hall directly, and we can and will address whatever issues come up. That's all I ask. And I do thank you for coming up. Appreciate it. I appreciate your demeanor. I know you guys had it for a long time. I know you weren't gonna bring a hammer and gavel, so. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Anybody else wanna say your piece?
I've talked to enough people.
Okay.
And they know where I stand, so.
Well, I too do appreciate at least the mostly reasonable conversation about it, and appreciate that, so. Okay, we're gonna move on with the rest of the agenda, so you guys are welcome to stay. It seems to me you're here for this purpose, it's up to you. If you wanna walk out, nobody will think anything less of you.
These things can be pretty exciting.
Dinner time, hopefully it won't last too long, but, all right, anybody else wish to speak before the council? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, was the consent agenda, which tonight consists of items A, B, and thank you, A, B, and C, and sub-items of A, B, and C. Anybody in the council want any item or sub-item removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately? Anybody from the audience want any of the items A, B, or C, or a sub-item removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately? Okay, hearing no exclusions, request for exclusions, I'd entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda, items A, B, and C as presented.
Second.
Any discussions or questions on any of these items? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay.
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. All right, going on to new business, item 6A, the Williamson County officials met, as you'll see in your packet, and approved a addition to Enterprise Zone for a new hotel that is located, proposed to be located on almost 3 acres on Halfway Road, as requested by JV Hospitality Group, LLC. This is the hotel that's been in process, I think you've seen for quite a while, so apparently they're finally getting ready to start. Do they have an anticipated start date, Glenn?
Latter part of summer.
latter part of summer? Okay.
Only question I had, Glenn, if you could help me understand the, connecting strip. Did not see that on the graphic. What is the connecting strip? Okay. I'm assuming, I'm assuming we're trying to make this contiguous property, right?
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So if it's contiguous, the yellow part would already be in and the green is what we're wanting to put in? These two are in already, and we'll want to put this one in.
The green is right there.
So this part up here is connecting strip.
Well, that's tying to the existing warehouse.
So this is our strip, and this is the portion that we can, to make them contiguous.
Connecting strip is tied to the.
Gotcha, okay, all right, perfect. Yeah. These two contiguous.
So again, all 8 governments in Williamson County have to approve this by ordinance, including ours. And that's what's on the agenda tonight. And my motion to approve, what's this ordinance number, Tammy? Do we have one yet?
Yeah, there should be one, it wasn't labeled, it was in the packet. 3886, I believe, Mayor.
My motion to approve ordinance 3886, adding territory to the Williamson County Enterprise Zone.
Second that.
Further questions, discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yeah.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yeah.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay, items B through E are all TIF 1 redevelopment agreements. If you guys don't mind, I need some help reading these.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 3887, residential TIF 1 redevelopment agreement with Castellano Properties LLC for 1801 East Main.
Second that.
Any questions?
Is that,
Let me give you a brief rundown of all 4 of those projects real quick. So 1801 that was already dealt with, I believe, in a zoning rezone. It's been a couple months ago when both the zoning board and you all took that up. So that's an apartment complex out on East Main Street, the former WGGH site. There's one little nuance with this one. So the antenna that was part of the WGGH development out there was not in the city limits, so it was not included in TIF. So any of their development costs within that area, it's a small parcel, would not be subject to TIF. For what it's worth, their development costs are mostly going to be underground on this project, property acquisition, infrastructure sort of thing. So the vertical construction won't necessarily be affected, but there will be a little nuance in there. It won't change how this agreement's delivered with the developer, but it's a little strange because there's one piece of this that's not in there. Secondly, Bryn Lane Properties, 307 East Boynton. That's a duplex development, small duplex development at the corner of Boynton and Old Creel, the northwest corner. That was previously brought up in a zoning issue where there was a proposed machine shop there. That project never went forward due to, in part, the lack of rezoning of that. So apartments are going there as a result of that. The CDR Rentals project is a acquisition and rehab of what will be a rental property in town. It's a single-family home located near Smalls. And then Josephine Miller, 1300 South Mechanic, bought that property, has done some rehab to it, and her and I actually had talked about the grant, whether that made more sense to her or doing a redevelopment agreement. I think she's done enough work over time. I think the redevelopment agreement made more sense, so that's what that is. Again, private party single-family home on Mechanic.
And that house will stay, they're just gonna remodel it.
That's correct, yeah. Same thing is true with CDR Rentals, that property will stay.
Right.
So first and second, Lee.
Yes.
Okay, any questions? Let's just ask Cody questions on all these for efficiency's sake. B through E here. Any questions on any of these?
I have one question.
And these are all standard 60-40 agreements. Developer will get 60% of any increment back, we will retain 40%.
On this one for the property on East Main, on the interest buy down, $3
Yeah.
million,
Yeah,
which typically we don't see that.
it's a big project, and so 30% of any borrowed money, any interest costs, are technically TIF eligible. So they will obviously get a mortgage on that property to do the construction, and 30% of that interest over the life of the TIF is eligible as an eligible cost. So that's why that number's so large. At one time I knew, I'm only speculating at this point, so don't hold me to it, but there were something like 75 units going in that property, and so it's a rather large project.
Okay.
Okay, let's, we got first and second, so we'll have a roll call on item B.
Commissioner Patton,
Yeah.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Asher.
Okay, item 6C.
I would make a motion to approve ordinance 3888, residential TIF redevelopment agreement with Bryn Lane Properties for 307 East Boyden Street.
Second that.
Any further questions on this one? Roll call on item C.
Commissioner Patton,
Yeah.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Asher.
Okay, item 6, D.
Make a motion, we approve ordinance 3889, a residential TIF redevelopment agreement with CDR Rentals LLC for 100 South Gray Street.
Second that.
Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yeah.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Asher.
Okay, item 6E.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 3890, a residential TIF 1 redevelopment agreement with Josephine Miller for 1300 South Mechanic Street.
I'd second that motion.
Any further questions on that? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yeah.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Asher.
Yay. Okay, items F and G are related, so let's just talk about F first. We had discussed this briefly at the last meeting, where we did not want the, you guys said you did not want the original allocation of funds from TIF on the $5,000 grants we were giving out to cover multifamily, although we already had a bunch that had applied. So I'll let Cody run through what this is and see what your demeanor is on it.
Okay, let me go back, answer one question in regards to interest. They will have to provide bank statements and, or mortgage interest statements and that sort of thing to verify those costs. So if it ends up being $2 million worth, they'll only get a potential to have $2 million back. I think they're estimating that number, but 8% interest, whatever they're borrowing at, I don't know yet. But
This is the first one I had seen in that packet like that.
Yeah, they will have to verify that through bank documents, so.
That is a TIF eligible cost, I think what your
It
point
was
is, it's
Yeah.
quite large.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It
So,
doesn't mean they'll actually ever
Right.
get that.
yeah,
Exactly.
but that's where that comes from, and it will have to prove out on an annual
Yeah.
basis. So, back to item F. So what I did, based on some of your feedback at last meeting, was created this program. It's a little bit different. The only real tweak is the dollar amounts are the same, but instead of providing 75% of development costs in the grant, up to 75%, we're only providing 50% of development costs. These are private entities, private businesses, and I think the thought is that they should have maybe a little more skin in the game, so that's where that comes from. We will still grant them up to $5,000, or we will grant them 50% of eligible costs up to $5,000. I should put it that way. Most of these applications that I've seen are more in the neighborhood of 10, 12, 15,000. So everyone's going to get that full grant amount. I don't think we're necessarily changing anything from what they were expecting. They're still going to get the full grant of $5,000. They just have to have share in that a little more than what we ask the private residences to do. So again, we have the money available in TIF, and so I think it's a good use of that money. And I'll talk about that a little more once we get to item H under the same topic. But again, the money's there. We already have several grant applications, and we'll deal with that in the next agenda item as well. But that's really the only thing that changes is that percentage of cost that we'll share in, up to 50% rather than 75, which was true of the other program.
And we're only allocating 75,000.
And we're only allocating 75,000 total
This is
for
in
this.
addition to the original 200,000. And Cody wants to speak to, I asked Cody to speak to that program here in a minute, but.
We didn't rob from Peter to pay Paul.
No,
We're
no.
adding it to it.
Correct. Because
Leaving that alone, adding to it.
little foreshadow, we're out of money in the other program, so.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
It did go quite a ways though. It'll help a lot of people.
So that was a question that I posed to you guys at the last meeting when you said you really didn't want this original 200,000, is if we could find the money, and this does pretty much extinguish our funds in the residential TIF one for the most part until next cycle.
Yeah.
So it doesn't leave us a whole lot.
We like to leave a
Of
little
wiggle room.
contingency in there just in case something happens, we have a big water main break or something like that. We still have some money in there to do a project if we had to, but I don't want to extinguish all those funds. I have to leave a little something in there.
So that's what it is. What is basically the question I left it off. Are you opposed to creating one of these for this other situation? And that's what we came up with.
So that being said, I think I would make a motion to approve ordinance 3891 if we're ready for that.
Yep.
Creating the residential TIF 1 multifamily rental development grant program.
Second.
Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. And then similarly, item G is the list in your packets of the grants that you've received thus far
Yeah.
that would qualify under that program that we heretofore have excluded from the residential program.
Right, I've got 10 applications in total, totaling a total grant amount of $35,385. So that leaves $39,615 of the 75 that you just allocated with that last action. So almost halfway there on this one already.
Quick question on
Yeah.
that. Do we verify that this work is completed there?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, yeah. Yeah, so applicants have to provide me before and after pictures in order to receive their reimbursement. I have to have a proof that their tax bill's up to date, and then they will have to provide proof of payment in order to get their reimbursement check.
And didn't we mention something about material being bought?
Yeah, so that's the caveat of the first program and this program. Materials, if possible, have to be purchased in Marion.
But the contractor doesn't have to be.
That's correct, yeah. Didn't want to get into stipulating a list of, available contractors and that sort of thing. Roofs, I've seen anything from 2 weeks out to, some people have told me that their contractor should be there before the end of the year. But no promises, so I felt it would be very difficult to go through and approve a list of contractors, so the material, and some of the work's being done by the homeowner, so I didn't want to have to say that we have to use a contractor.
What is the deadline on that, then? Do they have a?
March 31st,
Of next year?
yeah.
Okay.
Completion.
Is there 31 days in March? Yes, yeah.
Okay. We have a motion on the G.
I'll make a motion to approve residential TIF 1 multifamily rental redevelopment grant applications.
I'd second that.
Okay, Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Item 6H. Cody, you wanna tell us about your experience with this thus far?
Yeah, so, first I'll speak to what you're considering tonight. So almost half of the money will be allocated this evening with your yes vote. There was $95,004.62 worth of applications on the slate tonight. That's everything highlighted in yellow there in your packet. Program totals, this was some of the things I found interesting. Total number of grants issued was 48. Average grant amount was almost $4,100. Average homeowner spend was $8,800. So the total homeowner spend with the grant amount in total of our 200,000, there was an additional 234,000 spent in private money for a grand total of $434,515 spent as a result of this grant program. That's money that's spent with local contractors, may not be Marion contractors, but local contractors, materials bought in Marion, and ultimately homes, rehab to some extent here in town. You know, some of the challenges that we thought we might face is people, one, didn't want to have to share in that at all. I wasn't really met with that at all. I had a few folks needed to borrow money in order to make this work, and then would pay it off once they got their grant back and that sort of thing. But that was a process that I went through a couple times, had to write some letters to the bank saying this money would be guaranteed upon your approval, and then the qualifications that the grant laid out. But all in all, very well received from the public. Everyone was ecstatic that we were offering something like this, especially in those neighborhoods. You know, this is an area of town where, well, it's the reason we did this, right? We needed to pay a little attention there, and so that's what this did. The interesting thing is I read some materials that a municipal blogger puts out, and he's always talking about creating opportunities to talk to your neighbors. People seek out companionship from neighbors and that sort of thing. I had several of these, if you look down addresses, that you can tell were next door neighbors to each other. So if they weren't close already, they were going out and saying, hey, Jim, you know, are you aware of this program? Hopefully that was all good natured, not like, you know, I hope you put a roof on your house kind of thing. No, all in all, it was a great program. This was kind of a trial. We didn't know how well it would be received and how quickly people would jump on it. Well, we're technically Friday I was out of money, so we were 19 days in and all the funds were exhausted. So I think it's very popular. I look forward to doing this every year, and hopefully in future years, as that incremental amount that we receive increases, I hope we can allocate more money to this. That said, I hope we're able to spread it out over more than 19 days. It's been a little hectic around here.
Any common themes, roofing, siding, I mean, what?
Yeah, it's really good mix. Yeah, really good mix. Roof and siding was probably the most common. Had several do windows as well. That was another one. Windows seemed to be more of an affordable project than what I thought. I say that, I guess that's subjective, but 7,000 or 8,000 seems to do a whole home worth of windows. I had one guy, it was 12 or 15 windows he was replacing, and he was in that $7,500 range, so he was getting that full amount back. So, I mean, all in all, it was a good mix of everything, but a lot of roofs. I think in that was probably, if I was to go break it all down, I would say there were more roofs than anything.
I think it worked as intended. I'll move to approve residential TIF 1 residential redevelopment grant applications as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton,
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick,
Yay.
Commissioner Webb,
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland,
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Okay. You wanna do 7A since it's using your funds?
It's used
I have a clarifying point on that too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This will actually be split equally between the three departments that kind of feed the EMA GIS budget. That is the water fund, the sewer fund, and the general fund. So this will be split amongst those three funds, so.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to approve the purchase of a used vehicle, budgeted item using water department and other funds of a 2019 Buick Envision.
Second.
Did we get, I know, obviously this bid's from the Toyota dealership here in town. Were we looking for a specific type of
They
vehicle?
were looking for an SUV.
Okay.
They had originally budgeted 40,000 in that, obviously with
Yeah. It's kind of hard to bid used vehicles, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that, that's
They-
what I was getting at, I guess, is that.
They've
just
been looking
find-
since the middle of April, and they finally found something that was kind of under that 20,000
Okay.
with low miles and what they were looking for. Admittedly, they thought Buick was kind of an odd option, but it kind of fit all the criteria they were looking for, so.
Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton?
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick?
Yay.
Commissioner Webb?
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin?
Yay.
Mayor Absher?
Yay. Under 8A, we have to do this every so often. Williamson County EMA has completed their assessment and their multi-hazard mitigation plan and asked all the municipalities in the county to approve it. That'd be my motion to adopt Resolution 2023-11, adopting the Williamson County multi-hazard mitigation plan.
Second that.
Questions on this? Guess it hadn't been updated in a while, it's 2015, so it looks like, so. Okay.
Do we know what all the hazards are?
We do now.
We do that?
Yeah,
They did not
there is,
delineate that on there.
there is,
I don't
this
think
is,
2015 version included COVID, so.
Ah, so
Yeah.
it's on there now? Okay, good. Pandemics, perfect.
okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton?
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick?
Yay.
Commissioner Webb?
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin?
Yay.
Mayor Absher?
Yay. Item 8B, we've been working on this multi-use trail with, I think this particular one was actually the school district, Rides Mass Transit. We were partners with to get a ITEP grant funding for the Crab Orchard and Greenway. What we're asking you to approve tonight is an engineering agreement with Horner and Schifrin for the multi-use trail ITEP project, as I just described, and I'll leave that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
Any questions on this? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patton?
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick?
Yay.
Commissioner Webb?
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin?
Yay.
Mayor Absher?
Yay. Okay, item 8C. We've got some very old cameras. This is not something that we thought we were gonna have to do, but they're dropping like flies. And as we investigated these camera systems, particularly at the library, they're run with the old coax, not even Cat 3 cable. So if you look at the camera pictures, they are all jiggy. And our options, which is an option, and I want to bring it up, it's possible that we can replace some of this cable and try to find some of these old cameras on eBay or something like that, but it's jinky at best to do that, and there's no guarantee that we just don't spin our wheels. So the other issue is this is not a multi-bid situation, which always makes me feel uncomfortable to some extent, but the other issue, we have got to get our cameras on one system. I mean, it is a mess. We've got them on all kinds of different monitoring software apps and DVRs and systems, so we have had a really good experience with ProTech here locally. That's our recommendation. If you even want, we do not have to replace these. We can try to buy some used parts, but I see no sense in that whatsoever. I think we'll waste time. From a budget standpoint, we had budgeted some generic funds for different departments for capital improvement. I kind of hoped we wouldn't have to use them, and those roll over from year to year. Between the police department's air conditioning and these, that's going out the window, that plan is, but fortunately, we do have a budget line for it. But that's that.
I have a little question, but this is to Terrence. Cat 5, no, is there a reason we're going 5? I mean, because last time we was
No.
going 6.
Yeah, well, in all honesty, I haven't seen the bid, so I don't know exactly what they spec'd out.
Okay, so
But
not a big deal.
yeah, there's a big deal between Cat 5 and Cat 6.
Yeah.
So
I just figured if
Yeah.
we're.
Cat, huh?
There's a
Yeah,
difference
yeah,
in
that's
one.
really different, but Cat 6 is definitely what you wanna go with. And you
I
wanna look
would
at
think
the,
so, yeah.
I'm sure.
you wanna look
it's
at
a-
the pixels and all that. The only concerns I have with a lot of the IP cameras we use is our bandwidth that it takes from us.
Yeah.
But that's it. But there are definitely antiquated cameras that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any difference between Cat 5, Cat 6 as far as cable goes?
Oh yeah, it's speed and the
No,
transmissions.
I mean, cost-wise.
Not much.
Not much.
You're $20.
I think we ought to go with
Six
the
is
latest.
the standard.
Yeah,
anymore.
latest
Yeah.
and greatest.
I would
And
probably
2
say
years
that
would
was
be 7.
I would say that's probably a typo for them to say Cat 5.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Do we wanna clarify this and make sure we go with 6 even if
They're
Well, actually-
getting, it doesn't say that.
It doesn't say anything. in there.
I misspoke when I.
yeah, I think that's Cody's.
Oh, okay.
interpretation?
I was gonna put Cat 7, but I didn't want to speak out of turn.
I think you should, just to put him on alert, that we know what we're talking about.
Okay, that's my motion to approve the 2 quotes from Protect to replace camera systems at the library and Marion Senior Citizens.
Second time?
Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton?
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick?
Yay?
Commissioner Webb?
Yay.
Commissioner Stecklin?
Yay.
Mayor Absher?
Yay. Okay, under commissioner reports, we'll start with you tonight, Jim.
Yeah, street department, repairing washouts and drainage on Golf Course Road, Old Creel, EM Court, Norman, Feetsum, Broken Road. Sidewalks on Monroe Street,
Cody.
the dirt work and seeding for now is finished at Midway Court, so that's looking good out there. Of course, we'll continue the downtown cleanup as well. We're trimming trees and bushes along College Street as well. And one thing I might add is, talking with JD, is looks like Memorial Day service at 11 a.m. at the cemetery. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Time-wise, so everybody's welcome to show up for that. It's always a good service, so honor the veterans. It's gone on before. That's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Stecklin?
Okay, since the last meeting, water department reports, 1 fire hydrant was replaced, repaired 3 water leaks, 3 meter pits were repaired, 7 new water taps, and 2 old water mains were abandoned. So, you're all lucky tonight, it's the second meeting of the month, so that is trivia night, so this is always a big deal. I'm surprised there's not more people here for this, but.
Get a Tootsie Roll if you get it right.
So, the trivia tonight is, how many contaminants are regulated in our drinking water?
Oh, gosh.
This is a harder one. 12?
Cat 6.
Not enough?
Glenn, you cannot ask, you cannot phone a friend. I'm sorry, you're taking the call, I see it. It is 80. The US EPA has standards set for these contaminants which may occur in drinking water. So that's question number 1. I'm going to give you a much easier question now. When was the first plastic bottled water first introduced? And I'm going to give you, it's a multiple choice question. 1944, 1947, 1965, 1983.
47.
Did you see this?
No.
It's right.
Oh.
1947. First plastic water bottles began to enter the market along with stainless steel and glass. In the 50s, polyethylene was introduced, making the water bottles more lightweight and easier to shape. In 2018, the sales of bottled water in the United States officially surpassed soft drinks. Upcoming events, Memorial Day, remember our fallen soldiers, remember our past loved ones, may their legacies live on. So that's all I've got.
Okay, Mr. Bowe?
I don't have anything, other than the air conditioner is working great at the meeting.
Oh,
Both of them? Thank heavens.
Awesome.
We sure wouldn't want Chief getting hot out there.
they get that done in 2 weeks?
They did, they got on it the day after, the Tuesday, they were in St. Louis picking the equipment up and they were tearing the oven out.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Yeah, we've already paid the bill.
A new window fan, we could have paid for the cameras at
I offered to buy fans for every desk, but that was
He was
shot
this
down.
kind of fan, no.
Well,
Very genuine. Doug?
We have got through the hardest part of our year as far as payroll goes, which is the first, and we have survived. And it's all a downhill run from right here, or from now on, so we're good.
Okay, I gotta go back on the agenda to 4A. I accidentally skipped over that. Which is, as you recall, we made a presentation at last meeting and asked for comments on the Energy Transition Community Grant Program, and promised that we'd give another opportunity if anybody wanted to speak to us between then and now or tonight. And Cody, you want to give us a short report on that?
Yeah, so just as a reminder, this Energy Transition Grant Program, Phase 1, was essentially to qualify those communities that fall within the purview that the federal government put into place. We fall in that map because of a closure or a reduction in workforce within our community, which is, of course, the power plant at the lake. As a result, we've been allocated a little over $50,000 that we have to provide a budget for and apply for those funds with a set criteria of what we can use those for. And so we've decided that finding or using a wayfinding system downtown with signage and some different pavement treatments and some different signboards will be the best use of that money. So at the last meeting, we opened that comment period. To my knowledge, we've received 0 comments in this last 2 weeks. And so that application is due at the end of the month. So this officially closes that comment period. We'll put a ribbon on that application and get it sent in.
Okay. Sorry for skipping over that. Okay, item number 10 on the agenda is miscellaneous. Anything else to come before the council? Okay, I do have a need for a short executive session concerning property, and that I'll tell those of you that are here, we will not make any decisions or council action afterwards. We're either staying here if everybody leaves, or we'll go to another room and have our meeting. But all we'll do after this is adjourn the meeting, although you're welcome to stay if you like. So that'd be my motion, is to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussion of property matter.
Second.
Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Patton.
Yay.
Commissioner Barwick.
Yay.
Commissioner Webb.
Yay.
Commissioner Steckland.
Yay.
Mayor Absher.
Yay. Okay, Glenn and Wendy, I need you to stay. This will be brief.